Alan Wilson is a hero of mine and of my partner JJ Ainsworth, and he has been doing some remarkable research for decades with his partner Baram Blackett about the true origins of Britain. Also, redating the whole Trojan story, which he found in many of these ancient Welsh texts. He's also looked into some of the Bronze Age cultures in Wales, the Cymry, and this is something that he's going to mention in his interview, which is at the end of this lecture. It's about 20 minutes at the end of this 40-minute lecture. Ross Broadstock is continuing the work of Alan and Baram and kind of taking it to another level. All the books they've written over the years are now available. And so it's really worth checking out Ross's website. The link's on the website, hieroglyphics.com. And today Ross is really going to be getting into his research on the hieroglyphs of Egypt and how even the ancient Welsh language seems to be strongly connected with that, and he's done a whole analysis and really decoded it in a whole different way. And I think you're going to be very impressed with what they're about to share. So I'll hand it over to them, and then we're going to, at the end of the lecture, go straight into the interview with Alan Wilson, and then we're going to take a few questions just with Ross. So please give them a warm welcome.
All right, hello, welcome to the main part of the presentation. I'm talking about hieroglyphics, the word I've used to describe it, to show Cymro, the Welsh people, and the language. So this all started with Wilson and Blackett, who cracked this back in the 1990s. And they got this amazing book called Moses in the Hieroglyphs. And what they do there, they show how they worked out the language. It's brilliant. And people have read this and it's been amazing. They say, wow, that's amazing. I wish I could do that. So they don't really explain how you can do it, which is the difference with this book, Hieroglyphics, where you really can do it in hours. Because with Moses and the Hieroglyphs, a fantastic book, and what they do then, they show how you can take these hieroglyphs and read loads and loads and loads of the texts and the names, work out why the temples are there, all that kind of stuff. And it's a great big book, and it's not the bit about how to read hieroglyphs is quite small, really. And once they've done Moses in the hieroglyphs, you can see how biblical characters appear, who all the pharaohs really were. They sort out the dynasties a lot. It's massive. And then the Trojan War book, which again uses hieroglyphs to read, who the main characters were, who was Menelaus, who was the two Helens, all this kind of stuff. So with this one here, I'm going to show you now what I need you to do. I know this audience is great at doing this, is we have to try and somehow move out of our brain the fact that for 200 years, a certain way has been attempted. Because as I'll show you in this, it's not very successful. And if you can try and imagine we're going back 200 years and the two alternatives are being presented at the same time, and then you decide which do you think works and makes most sense. And within minutes, you'll get the basic idea. It's that easy, honestly. All right, so the basic principle, this is an example that Gardner put in one of his books. He's an Egyptologist. It's called the Rebus Principle. So what you do is you see a symbol, and it's to do with what it sounds like, okay? It's all to do with the sound. So in this situation, we've got a B and a leaf. B, leaf, okay? B, leaf. Say them together, belief. You get belief, all right? That's how you'd represent it. So the actual symbols themselves don't look like the word, but they sound like the word, and this is the key. But the problem is, how can you know what a word sounds like or what a bee sounds like if you don't know the language, you don't know the correct word for that little insect we see on the screen there? You need to know the language to make it work, and this is the key. And if you go back, I should have welcomed you to the presentation. So as a great example, how would you draw a hieroglyph for welcome? To welcome, you could draw some with their arms out or whatever. You could try different things. But in Welsh, what you'll find is the word for welcome is croeso. You might have seen this if you've driven to Wales. You'll see the sign croeso I Gymru, welcome to Wales, croeso. Now, fortunately, I think it's more than fortune, because the whole Welsh language, you have dual meanings of words. And it seems to be you've got one word you can draw and one which it sounds like, which is the word you intend. I don't know, it's almost like the language was developed at the same time as the hieroglyphs. It works that well, as you will see. So, if we want to do croeso, we'll just draw croes. Croes is very easy to draw. And sure enough, the hieroglyph for welcome is a cross. So if you go in the dictionary in the back of the book, you'll see a cross. Cross in Welsh is croes, gives croeso the intended word, welcome. So croeso, croeso pawb, welcome everybody. I don't speak Welsh, by the way, okay? You don't need to speak Welsh to do this. You just need an old Welsh dictionary, because some of the words have changed in the last couple of 100 years, which is quite sad in a way, because it seems the language has maintained, incredibly well for a long time before that. I won't go too much into the background of it, but I will mention, if you go back to the 1840s, look at linguists like von Bunsen, and he said all what he called Indo-European languages all share a similar, or the same root from an ancient Assyrian language. And he looked at all of them, and he declared the place where it's least changed over time, as he put it, most jealously guarded, is in Wales, where there haven't been many invasions or movements of populations, that kind of stuff, apart from maybe from the Middle East, another issue. And it's a purest form, and it just works, okay? So don't dwell too long on that. Unfortunately, going back 200 years, these are the famous characters you might recognise from my drawings. On the left there, we have Sir Thomas Young, who was the English champion. He was promoting it from their side of things. He was the genius. He's a great scientist, medical person. He's the one he worked out how eyes can see colour. Incredible stuff, all right? There's laws and principles named after him. An absolute genius. So he was sort of brought in, or he volunteered to have a crack at it. And Champollion, the same famous Jean-Francois Champollion, revolutionary France, the guy who's supposed to have cracked the hieroglyphic code. Okay, their problem was they did not know what the language was. They wanted to use the rebus principle, but where do you go for it? Champollion had a dream when he was 11 years old. It was definitely Coptic. Became an expert, the best Coptic person of his era, and he decided that must be the language. That's how it was decided. You've got to remember, there was no Egyptology at the time. Champollion was the first chair of a university department, so he just came up with this by himself. So, got to bear these things in mind. So the very first symbol, which you might have seen many times on hieroglyphs that they came across, was this square, slightly rectangle sometimes. What on earth can that be? Fortunately, sometimes it appears like this. And fair play to them, they worked out this is a door. Or an entrance maybe, but it's a door, okay? So what they then had to do, I'm not going to give the game away just yet, because you'll see in a minute, this word had to begin with a P sound, because they were working on phonetics, all right? And they decided that each of these hieroglyphs is a letter. This is the big problem. What you're able to discover through this, each hieroglyph represents a word, and it's always the same word. All those complicated things you had to go through to try and learn hieroglyphs, forget all that. It's as a written language should work. There's the word, just say it out loud, and what it sounds like is what you want, all right? So, they've got this, they've got the door. Can't find any word in Coptic beginning with P that represents a door. Champollion decides the Egyptians didn't have a word for door. So why draw a door if you don't have a word for it? So he found some Hebrew word for to open or something like that. And so, well, that must be it. If maybe he's been these days, they might have driven down the M4 and seen a sign like this, and you can see Cardiff Gate Services, Gwasanaethau, that wonderful long word for services, and you see Porth. Porth means entrance. It can mean door. It's an old Welsh word. People use drws for door now, but you see Porth. Very ancient word. For example, at Cardiff, the old harbour is Porth. So Porth might actually be the root of the English word port. Or they share a common root. Let's put it that way, okay? So there's Porth. And the great thing is, using this rebus principle, when they draw a door, they're not really talking about a door. Why have they put a door? Well, door, Porth, the root por, means supreme one, or sovereign. So when you see that, that's it. You've now learnt two hieroglyphs. You learnt the cross is welcome, and the door, or the square, is supreme one. Now, quite often this comes with this one just below it, this sort of semicircle there. It can be filled in sometimes. That's just down to chiselling or painting. Doesn't seem to matter. So they then had to work this one out, and they had a good idea. This was a T sound, for reasons you'll see. So they had to think, how on earth? And they did work out it was a cake, which I think is very impressive. They worked out this was a cake. Look in your standard books, this is a cake. But they couldn't find a T word for cake. So the first two symbols they've ever tried, and they're already stuck, all right? But anyway, this remains persevering with Coptic, Aramaic, Hebrew, all these things. Didn't think, let's try Welsh, because, and here's my lovely wife, with a beautiful, what's called a Titian lap. Still made in Wales, it's traditional Welsh cake. You can see the shape, there's the semicircle, Titian, T. So once again, T means you are in Welsh. you know, oit or something. What are you? This kind of thing. So you are. Okay, so the first two symbols you see together a lot in hieroglyphics. You see the square and the semicircle, or the door and the cake. And what we know, because they're words, is that it means supreme one, you are. You think, hang on a second, why didn't they write you are the supreme one? Well, this is another clue, because this is Welsh style syntax. So a Welsh person, you might hear them say, instead of saying, for example, you are a good boy, they would say, well, there's a good boy you are, because that's Welsh syntax, that's the word order, okay? Think of Yoda. If you're having trouble thinking of it, think how Yoda speaks, all right? So Yoda might say something like this: hieroglyphics read you can, when book read you have. That's Welsh syntax. Why on earth Yoda uses Welsh syntax, I have no idea. There we are. You make a pretty good winger, I'd imagine, although he was a little bit small. Okay, so let's look at the meaning on the far right. So we've got supreme one you are, and then, because they're words, obviously a string of hieroglyphs is a sentence. It's not some convoluted word you can't say, like NSWT, these amazing words you see coming from Egyptology. No, it's a sentence, right? So supreme one you are. So what we're going to do now is build a sentence. Might seem a bit random, but if the sharper people out there might notice why I'm choosing these hieroglyphs in this order, and then you'll become revealed in a couple of minutes. Okay, so we have the supreme one you are, and you've got the lion llew, because it's lledu, which is wealthy or abundant. So Welsh is Old Welsh, very rich. You get a word with lots of similar words coming from the same root, so wealthy, abundant. It kind of gives this very powerful language. Okay, then you've got the olives, olivide, practically the same phonetically, which means the successor. So he's the successor to whatever it is, okay? So we're building up a sentence there. Let's put another one in. Oh, and this is a good one. I like to include this one because you got here with the mattress. And look in all the dictionaries, budge, all that kind of stuff. You'll see it's mattress. And I remember when I was doing the book, the editor who lives in California, and he's a Germanic background, doesn't know any Welsh. Perfect editor for this book, I thought. And he also volunteered. He's a great guy. So Paul Hartel did a brilliant job. And he said, mattress can't be an ancient Welsh word. It's a modern English word. I'm very sceptical of that. This is what you want from your editor. Come back with things like that. So in the book, you'll see every word has footnotes to explain them. All right, well, not every word, but all the main ones we use. So matras is an important word. I want you to remember the word ma-tras. It's two words. Ma is place, this place, ma. And tras, the verb trosso, is to spread out. So you're spreading out a place. So you can imagine if someone wants to sleep, you spread out place, or you spread out your mattress, or your mattress, spread out your blankets, whatever it is, you spread out a place. So another word which seems to be a very ancient Welsh word, or Assyrian word, rather than something from Slumberland invented. Okay, so then we got, we'll do a double, just to show what happens with doubles. This is the E. You'll see this on charts and stuff. It's an Eden. The modern Welsh word for cornstalk, which this is Ydyn with a Y. But that's only the last couple hundred years. Y is a modern invention. It's Eden, okay? Eden. Now, we got two of them. So automatically, double E. It's just two E's, right? Sometimes it gets shown, the double gets shown as a Y. That's just, I don't know, because of English spelling. Anyway, at E, right? Double E. Okay, so we just want to get onto duality now, because in Welsh you got un, doi, tri, doi, do. Two sounds like God. Do is God. Similar with French. Un, deux, trois, deux, two, Dieu, God. Deux, two, Dieu, two. So again, Rebus principle. Two of anything you will find in hieroglyphs represents supreme. It's got a dual meaning. So you've got the is he is or she is, and then two of them supreme. All right, so it just makes perfect sense. You're building a sentence. And we got there established or untroubled. So we got a sentence, and this sentence is slightly clumsy, which is a clue in itself, and you'll see why this is a bit clumsy in a minute. Well, I'd have to give you a clue. I mean, well, you'll see now. Anyway, so what we got is the supreme one you are, wealthy successor to this place. Wealthy successor to this place. He is the supreme one, and he's established untroubled. All right, bit of a mouthful maybe. Then we put on the far left-hand column where we take the initials, and you can see what they've done. Read this down here, pour T-O, oh, hang on a second, T-O, two vowels next to each other. Again, similar to French, you drop a vowel, like you don't say their friend, le ami, you drop the E, you say lami. Seems to be the same principle here. So we drop that little I, and we say Ptolemaies. Ptolemaies. In English, you say Ptolemy, or people just say Ptolemy, but that's English. This is a Greek name. And if you listen to a Greek speaker, I'm lucky to have a Greek friend, confirm for me as Ptolemaies. That's how they say it. And this phonetically is bang on, okay? Because again, the A gets dropped from ma, because you don't have two vowels together, so it's mese. Ptolemaies. Ptolemies, all right? I think I sounded Italian then, but I'm not really good at Greek accents. But the important thing is, I don't want this to become a distraction, because that's the distraction that ruined everything 200 years ago. They only went with this first sound and said these symbols all represent letters. They aren't. They are words. They are words. This is the names you sometimes see inside, we'll come on to them into cartouches, are acronyms like NATO. NATO doesn't mean anything, right? And the word, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So the word is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They're the words. That's the right-hand column. That's what's important. NATO is a way of spelling it or something. And what seems to have happened here, as is pointed out by people, but these are later Greek names. It's the Ptolemaic dynasty. These are just fudges because they're foreign names. Well, they are in a way, yes. But they've had to use existing words and somehow make a sentence that will have initials to make it so you can pronounce this foreign name. And see some of the problems they had, okay? So what we have then is supreme one you are, successor to this wealthy place. Supreme he is, certainly, okay? You are the supreme sovereign, successor to this abundant place, unchallenged supreme one. All right, so that's what Cymraeglyphics gives you. It's brilliant, isn't it? You can actually read it. I haven't got time to go through in great detail. All the details are in the book, loads of these. But Alexandros. So on the top you have the conventional ALKSNDRS, and this is one of those weird ones because officially there are no vowels in hieroglyphics, and yet the very first letter is an A. Ptolemies, we had about 3 of them. So you say, oh, that's just because it's a foreign name. All right, well, maybe not. So let's have a look. So we've got this Alexandros, trying to make that into a sentence. Whereas I'll just quickly run through it. You've got the aderin, the bird. Aderin is bird in Welsh. For aderin, okay. Aderin gives us the Welsh word then for to proclaim or to make a pronouncement. So what we have is, you'll see these a lot. If you looked at hieroglyphic text, you'll see lots of them. It's scattered, it seems. They're like a full stop in reverse, is the easiest way to think of them. It shows the start of a new sentence. So proclaimed, imagine proclaimed, colon, and then the rest of the sentence, okay? And the animals and the birds obviously point towards the start of the sentence. So yes, the initials say Alexandros, but it's also a sentence, all right? Or as best they can do with a foreign name, okay? So we've got the bird, first of all. I don't seem to have a cursor. Sorry, it's so small, but there's the bird, Then you've got the lion, we've already done that, Ptolemies. The great thing with Cymraeglyphics, same hieroglyph, same word, everywhere you see it, okay? There's a couple which you might have a couple of doubts about, and they're listed in the dictionary, because you can't, well, did he draw this? Is that a sheep or is that a goat? That kind of thing. But once you know what it is, it's the same, all right? And, oh, by the way, just to say, when I put the dictionary together, if there are 2 or 3 options, what I've tried to do is go through as many texts and cartouches and things as possible and work out which one seems to work always, and that's the one listed at the top. Anyway, we're digressing slightly. So what we got here, we got the abundant place, and we got this bucket, the Kelly is to shelter. So he shelters the wealth. All right, then you've got the cloak again. We've seen that already. We've got Segan, the cloak, and then you've got like the certainty. This, the swimming thing, one of my favourite ones, because it's still in use today. If you go to somewhere like Cardiff swimming pool, you will see that symbol on the door, and underneath it, they don't say water, it says novio, which is to swim or to float. And that's still, to this day, is novio, all right? So there we got, so the root of novio is no, which is to keep. So he keeps things with certainty, he looks after the calmness. The next 2, very important combination. Please remember these 2, because you'll see them again in a minute. So we got the hand, threatening hand like this, durnio, which can mean to threaten, it can mean fist, it can mean strike. Duh. So we got da, durnio, and then the mouth, roch, to proclaim, to give orders, to proclaim, okay? And then we got the sikrai is security or certainty, okay? Certainty. So he rules with certainty. And the last 2, if you look on my books and things, I use this as a logo. Hope you can see that. Rossi. My name, Rossi. So phonetically, Rossi. and then speaks with certainty. How cool is that? You can have fun making up your own names, because once you know they're just acronyms, you can choose the words in the dictionary that make out a nice sentence. Rossi speaks with certainty. All right, great. So they've got a reason for this. Now, one of the things I want you to notice straight away, which is a massive clue that they just missed 200 years ago. And you read the old records, you're like, oh, you're so close. They spotted that you got Alex, there's no X. And what the writers have had to do is use a K and an S, a cut sound. So an Alex, which, so immediately when you're looking for which language is behind this, you should know it's nothing with an X in it. All languages with an X, gone. They don't have an X. Another language without an X is Welsh. This is a modern sign. Taxi, taxi. There's no X in Welsh, so it's spelled taxi. Exactly the same as it's done with Alexander. A lot of clues. There's loads of clues. You go through it in the book, examples, you know, the number of vowels and syntax and things like this, and it just, I mean, it has to be really, but there we are. Let's look at this. So, Alexandros. All right, so unfortunately, our friends Champollion, Thomas Young, all those guys, Birch and Budge, and all the people in the past, or even today, didn't know the language behind the hieroglyphs. So what they use is a process of comparison and deduction. The reason they knew Cleopatra, Ptolemies, and Alexandros was not because they read them. It's because they found where they were and they thought, oh, but that must say Alexandros, let's give it a go, you know. And then they did the comparison. Yeah, the letters match up. They must be letters. We're off and running, okay? Immediately, though, they missed a few clues. First of all, let's get the big one at the bottom, Alexandros. You can see the S in the middle is different to the S at the end of the word. Oh, why didn't no one think, why is there two different symbols for S? Unfortunately, it was decided then that, well, you know, it can mean different things, different places. The worst one, well, I'll come on to the worst in a second, but anyway, I don't know why no one actually thought, well, maybe that S in the middle is a se, and you got Alexandros. Even that would be something. And the R, why isn't the R a Ro? Alexandros. I don't know where the mindset for there being no vowels when there's so many vowels on display came from. I really don't. Because if you want to make Alexandros, there's an O, just use that olive, stick that in, you know? What's the problem? Anyway, so looking at this, there's other things I should have noticed. Like, for example, and I'll go through all of them, but I'll give you what the big one that leaps out, is Cleopatra is spelt wrong. Because we already know the hand is durnio, it's a fist or a slap, a strike, a threat. It's a duh. So Cleopatra's been spelt with a duh. Why would you do that? As kids say these days, why would you do that? Well, you can see the duh and the tuh are almost the same sound. So if you say Cleopatra with a duh, Cleopatra, you're going to know who I mean. It sounds more or less the same. But as I mentioned before, the key is you've got this combination, which is fantastic. You've got the threaten and pronounce. And that means to rule. You threaten and pronounce. You give the orders, and you've got the might to back it up. And Cleopatra, you want to make her into a ruler. There's no good words beginning with T that really fit. Hey, let's put this in, the ruler combination, to show she's a ruler. And you can go through all about Cleopatra as well, okay? So that's the thing. But her name is spelt with a duh, not a tuh. So you say, what do you mean you spelt my name wrong? Well, they had to do it so she can show she's the ruler, rather than any of the T words available. Things like this were missed. Right, now what Thomas Young did spot very early on, this is from the Rosetta Stone. It's not really clear, don't worry, I'll show you some drawings. I've got a few suspicions about the Rosetta Stone, but that's for another discussion, okay? Maybe next time. So what we have here, he spotted very cleverly that you can see the name that we did earlier, Ptolemies. All right, I've blown it up, and I'll draw them on for you so you can see it. So there's the portee. Usual combinations, you're all over the place, supreme when you are, and there's all the rest we went through. Okay, the success, there's the abundant place, you know, the divine, he is, and certain. So there's Ptolemies, right? It reads the sentence. It's, yeah, that's it, the letters, that says Ptolemies. Well, hang on. What about all the other stuff in the cartouche? They never seem to come back to that, which is strange. Or maybe they did, but, you know, it's endless long name. But I'll just draw that in. And you can see there we've got the snake around these three symbols. And I will come on to those in a few minutes. Just bear them in mind that they are on the Rosetta Stone. These are what's called titles. Now, by the way, reading from right to left this time because the lion is pointing to the right. So we go right to left this time, okay? They point towards the start of the sentence. Sentence. There's a sentence. Okay, so what we have here is a title or a prenom it's called, which tells you something about the person. Some of them are outside the cartouches, some are inside. Okay, so the argument became then, because as I said, this Thomas Young was an absolute genius. Loads of scientific things and medical things named after him. He's the problem solver of the day. And he worked out, fair play to him, very early on, said, look, he said, this system of writing letters in the cartouches does not work outside. It cannot work, and I cannot do this without the language. And he walked away from it. He said it's impossible without knowing the language. Champollion, I know the language. It's Coptic. I had it in a dream when I was 11. And so what Thomas Young said was that, hey, it might work inside for foreign names. It's a way of spelling foreign names. He was so close. See, if they just followed that a bit further, they would have got this 200 years ago. I think how much trouble would have been saved. He said it's just for foreign names. It doesn't work for the text. You can't read the text using this. Champollion said, yes, I can. And he went away and he had to find something as old as possible that predated the Greeks. So his great moment, which you probably all heard about, I have it, I've done it. I've got it. I've solved hieroglyphs. I can now read them, was because this cartouche he found. Now what he did, he looked at this and he went, I know what that sun symbol is. It's Re, he called it R-E or Ra. And there he did actually put a vowel in at the beginning. He put R-E as Re, which, because he had, so why didn't he do it with the lion and all the other things and the Sagan and all that? Anyway, he didn't. He just went with, so he ignored the line at the bottom. Pretended it wasn't there. Nothing. It's just to underline it, right? Oh, the middle bit looks like an M. Excellent. It's an M because I know those two cloaks are S's. So I've got Ramses. And obviously there's no vowels, so I've cracked it. This is Ramses. He got so excited, ran down, told the world, and then promptly collapsed on his bed for 3 days. So exhausted and excited that he cracked it. What a tragedy, because the problem is the line is important, as we've already seen. And you'll see again in a second. That's Ma for place, Ma. So you've got Ra, Ma, and that's an Those, as they look like, are root vegetables, little turnips or whatever growing on there under the ground on the roots, okay? Root vegetables, venin, and that gives us order. Is of order. And then you've got the certainty thing we've already covered. So he's double certain, so he's divine, and he's certain. So he looks after the certain order of the country, divine one of this place. It reads as a sentence, reads perfectly, okay? They couldn't find anything to come up with an M that's even close. So if you look it up, you'll find it's down as Meza, which means birth. That's the way it's showing birth, apparently. So what Champollion ended up with was RMSS. It said, yep, no vowels, I've proved it. I've also proved that it works on this name. Therefore, it works everywhere. And this is the false dichotomy we had, where you had two blokes arguing, and they said, well, if I prove you wrong, that proves I'm right. Whereas the people here know that's not always the case. They can both be wrong, both thrown out. Funny enough, Thomas Young was nearer. But there you go. So what we have instead, Cymraeglyphics is Ramses. It says the name, right? And also, it's a sentence. It tells you who he is, right? The names, the initials are a bit of a distraction. Imagine trying to learn English by reading acronyms. You'd be stuffed. Okay, so there it is the other way up, as you sometimes see it. So we can go through it. Power of this place, order established. He's the divine God, okay? It's quite straightforward. The power over this place, the God ruler that establishes order. All right, so it works perfectly. And you see it sometimes like this. And I just want to mention, if you look at the left-hand one, you see another combination of 4 symbols at the top. I'll just quickly go through those. You've got the cornstalk, which is he is. We've done that. This is the keel of a ship. You slot the wood into it. So that gives us Adsel, which gives us the lineage, the succession. We've already done the water, Novio, to keep. And then we've got a pulley, which is Chwelovan, which is like vigorous, agile, that kind of thing. Used quite a lot. So what do you have there? He or she is the one who rigorously preserves the lineage, the descendant, okay? And then we've got a bit more talk. See the mark below the sun on the left-hand cartouche? This way up this time. Still just a mark. So Ramses. A little bit different, again, because they've used a different S. This is certain. I don't know if it's significant. I mean, Boris Budge just says they put them in wherever they like, because he didn't know they were words. But you still get the similar thing. It's a sentence. The power of this place keeps order with certainty and security. So maybe they want to emphasize that. Either way, it's a sentence. It says Ramesses. The one on the right clearly isn't Ramesses, although people have tried to make it fiddle it and to make it work. You've got the sun, Ra, then you've got the service, which is Gwas, like the Anubis thing on the stick. And then you've got the life sign being held here, which is Hoidel, the whole of life, and then certain. So it's you basically got the power of service for the whole of your life with certainty. Is that kind of stamp, all right? It doesn't really read as a name, but anyway. So let's come back to the one we saw on the Rosetta Stone, as spotted by Sir Thomas Young. And there we go. There it is. We've got a snake outside these three symbols. And the genius of Wilson and Blackett again. The snake is neither, and nigh or near is the negative in Welsh. It's not. And in Welsh you have, you sort of say, a good boy you are not. You know, you put this, you would say not a good boy you are. If you're not a good boy, you say not a good boy you are. So this is the same sort of thing there. You've got this big not, which is a negative, okay? So if we look at the three symbols inside, you've got the life sign, ankh, life, and then we've already done the cake before, which you are. And there's ma, there's that place, the place. So life you are of this place. You are life of this place. Not with a big snake around it. You are not life of this place. You are immortal. You're a god. And amazingly, the conventional Egyptologists, they got really close to that without knowing any of the words, which I think is very impressive. Unfortunately, the rest is a bit bashed up, and I want to go back to the British Museum and try and take a better photograph, see if I can see it somewhere else. You can just about see the supreme when you are, if you look closely. And then what it reads off the left, I'm not sure. Anyway, so there it is again. So not life you are of this place. You are not life of this place. You are immortal. Brilliant, isn't it? Here's another favourite of mine. You see this outside cartouches, see lots of places. You've got the sun and the goose. So sometimes you see it like this, sun and the goose. Some people think it's a duck, but there's a cartouche for a duck. It's got a great big bill on it. It looks very different, okay? And sometimes you see it like this. Oh, we'll also do this prenom quickly. Those four symbols you see, just make a mental note. Okay, I want to go through the cartouches again. I'm going to push for time a bit. But I was going to do this goose and sun. This is my favourite, because the word for sun in Welsh is rael. That's a modern pronunciation. It's a North Walian thing, really. It's a rar. Ra. The Welsh word for sun is basically ra. It's become a ral. It's ra. It's the same word. How amazing is that? And as we saw earlier with the dual meanings of Welsh words, Rarls means the power, the supreme one. And of course, there's always connections with the sun and God and all that kind of thing, all right? And goose is gwydd. Gwydd. Gwydd, another dual meaning word. Gwydd also means knowledge or presence. So this would mean in the presence of the supreme power, or in the presence of the power. Isn't it wonderful? It gets even better. Put them together. Ra gwydd. Ra glwydd, Rebus principle, sounds the same. Ra glwydd means the Lord or Master. To this day, you go to a Welsh chapel and they're praising Ra glwydd, the Lord. Praise the Lord. Ra glwydd. Ra glwydd. There it is. Beautiful. This, to me, is compelling just by itself. How else could you explain a goose appearing all over the place, all right? Ra glwydd. I'd just do one of them sort of double words, if you like, in the same hieroglyph. Here we got three mountains drawn, okay? This is where it's a bit tricky working out what are they drawn, right? But three mountains. So the word for three, un dau tri. Tree is three. Mountain is mynydd. Tree, mynydd. All right, three mountains. So what? What are they trying to say? Get your dictionary out. My old 1688 dictionary. Look it up. Tre mynydd. It means explorer. So you see that symbol? It's explorer. That's so you can work it out. I mean, it's hard to explain how easy it is when you do it. You can imagine that these signs were everywhere. They didn't have an educated population. They weren't spending years in university learning to read. You don't have to. Just say what you see. Tree mynydd. Oh, tree mynydd, yeah. You don't even need letters. The main theory is that letters and writing came from hieroglyphs. This is so brilliant. I wonder if it came after. It works so well. It's a bit like emojis on phones or something. This is easier. Okay, always a bit blurred. You'll see it better in a second. It's not one of these prenom things. And here we see we've got a mosquito, a leek, and then the URTT at the bottom. By the way, Nefertiti. Nevod is heaven in Welsh. Nevod, and you see the two TTs, Nevod Titi. Heavenly, supreme you are. That's Nefertiti, all right? You can do all the names, Tutankhamun, all of them, right? They mean something in Welsh. Nefertiti means heavenly one supreme. Anyway. So I've drawn it a bit clearer there for you to see. Now, you might have seen this. It's a very curious one because it's not always a mosquito. Sometimes you see this combination. It looks like a hornet. It's got an insect, little sticky thing on his nose. So I'll show that in a second. It can be other stinging insects. It's all to do with it. So obviously, it's not the insect that's important here. It's what does the insect do? It bites or stings. And then we got our leak, which is much easier, okay, and the 2 T's at the bottom. So if you look at sting or pain, you've got this word nachi, which is nacha, to behold. So behold, and then Kenin gives us Kenad a message. Behold a message. And Wilson Blackett would say that supreme you are, or ruler you are, because remember the 2, doi, do, gives us God, remember? So you've got this you are twice, supreme ruler you are. I wonder if it's more the that is, so it's the sort of that is supreme. So it's, behold a message, that is, because T can mean that is or you are. So behold a message, that is divine, a divine message. It doesn't really matter, the effect's the same, and you'll see this a lot. So there you go, there's one of those. So right, and I cut to the chase a bit, hopefully whetted your appetite, because it works with all the words. They all work. They all work. It's anyway, it's hard to because that's basically it. You can now do it. Although there's some cool stuff coming up about pictograms, which we'll get on to. Right, so the key difference to remember. With Cymraglyphics, a hieroglyph, wherever you see it, represents the same word. As you would expect a written language to work, right? You can't spend 30 years studying it. By the way, I'll just point out to you, if you look at someone like Irving Finkel with cuneiform, I have grave concerns that might be the same thing. Go and watch one of his videos or something, and you'll see there every symbol could have 6 to 12 meanings, and you get a line of them. Therefore, you have to use your intuitive judgment. After 30 years, he says, to learn how to read this. What use is that as a language? Seriously, how are people supposed to know? You send them a message, and you go, well, it could mean this, it could mean that, it could mean the other. I don't know. No, it's really easy. You just read it, and I think someone out there wants to have a crack at cuneiform, let me know, or I'll just do it. Don't ask my permission. Crack on. So, and also with Paleo-Hebrew, same thing. And again, it's in Hebrew, no vowels. That's another subject. Right, so let's look at the conventional system. This is my word. So, whereas the conventional system, hieroglyphs can be letters, signifiers, symbols, indicators, decorations, words, concepts, and there's apparently no way of knowing for certain which it's meant to be. Okay? And this is not me creating a straw man argument just to knock it down. Let's look at what the most famous Egyptologists say about it. Or first of all, just to give you an idea, this is one page, I think it's about 15 or 20 pages, just about the bird. Those no vowels, you got alright? So you got, if you see a bird like this, it means this, if you say this, it can mean that, because they're trying to make a word into a letter. You imagine if you read a book and all the words you thought were letters, you'd have no chance, would you? It'd be impossible. So there's about 20 pages just getting the word the bird. Of course, in Cymraglyphics, it's one line. It's it tells you what bird is and what it means. So there you go. So as Wallace Budge, I love Wallace Budge, by the way. I'm a bit of a go at him here, but you'll see I do a tribute to him, because if you read his dictionaries, he tells you it's nonsense. He says at the front of his dictionary, he says for each word you will see a number of possible definitions which have been kind of deduced by working out. But even at the end of all this, it is nothing more than a guess. He said it's a guess. Wallace Budge. And if you go online and search for an Egyptology book, or how to read hieroglyphs, or hieroglyphs dictionary, it's still his books come up. This is the bedrock. All the work of Gardner and all the other people since, they've all been built on what he's done. They've tweaked it, they've reorganized it, they've changed a few. It's the same principles, okay? This is from 1980s. They're now, he was there, his name was Harry James, Welsh boy, so he never spotted it. This is how he describes the conventional way of looking at hieroglyphs, okay? So cumbrous and illogical does the multiplicity of signs seem that it is hard to understand the process of thought by which it was evolved. How would you come up with this crazy system where you don't know what anything means? And even more difficult to imagine why it should have continued with so little development over so long a period of time. Well, I agree 100%, mate. Because when you use Cymraglyphics, every symbol means the same. You couldn't change it. I think it's also one of the reasons why maybe Welsh stayed so unchanged. Because as soon as you change the words, the writing system on the hieroglyphs don't work anymore. They're interlocked. Cross, crois and croiso. You can't change the word for a cross because it won't give you croiso anymore. Well, let's get into philosophical things and who knows. But the point is, the current system is totally unworkable. Try and learn it yourself. Get a book, Egyptology for Beginners or something. Have a go. It's impossible. Oh, not only that, but the Cymraeglyphics words make sentences that you can read. Okay? Let's go right back to the beginning. Champollion, he's the one who worked it all out. He's the genius, apparently. This is what he wrote in 1828. Not that long before he died, tragically young. But he's working it through, and he's like, God, this is weird. Wherever I go, things mean different things, and they change sounds. And so the hieroglyphic, this is what he said. Hieroglyphic writing is a complex system. A script all at once figurative, symbolic, and phonetic in one and the same text. You got a block of text, means one thing there, something else there. In fact, in the same sentence, the same hieroglyph can mean two different things. And guess what? I might venture in one and the same word. So if you've got the same symbol twice in the same word, it means one thing there. Maybe it's a letter, and over here it's a signifier or whatever. I don't know, all these things they come up with. That's how bonkers it all is. And you say, well, that's 200 years ago. Things have moved on, right? Okay, well, here's one of the most recent books I could find. Cracking book. I totally, cracking, excuse the pun. Mr. Robinson, good author. It's all about the life of Jean-Francois Champollion. Of course, he gives some background of how he developed it all this kind of stuff. So, a great book to read. Sorry it's a bit long, the text here, but he does, because you can't explain the modern system very short. So to use modern terminology then, the hieroglyphs comprise a fairly small set of phonetic signs, the ones you can use as sounds like, Rebus principle, and it can be 1, 2 or 3 consonants. They're not really words, like that's you get NTS is a popular one. Anyway, so let's just read this. Representing 1, 2 or 3 consonants. These are combined with hundreds of logograms, that is conceptual or symbolic signs, sometimes known as ideograms, that represent whole words. Sometimes they are whole words. Yeah, well, actually they always are, but anyway. From the Greek meaning word. Many of the hieroglyphs signs function both phonetically and logographically, depending on context. See, it's all about deduction. Where'd you find it? What was next to it? What else did we see? We can piece it all together, right? That's not reading, that's not translating. If I give you something to translate, you wouldn't say where you find it. If you knew French or German or whatever, you would try and translate it. Anyway, the boundaries are not hard and fast. This is the great bit. Hieroglyphs do not maintain caste distinctions. One thing one place, another thing somewhere else. This goes all the way back to Champollion's comparison, okay? Moreover, with the pictograms, the picture does not necessarily convey the sign's meaning. A particular pictogram may act as a logogram in one phrase and a phonetic sign in another. I mean, really, how are you supposed to read or understand this kind of system? As Harry James said, who would invent this? Why would it continue for hundreds or even thousands of years if it was such a load of whatever? So anyway, he mentions there pictograms, and I do want to touch on these because this will excite you. If you're interested in ancient Egypt, you want to go on a Hugh Newman's Megalithomania tours, all that kind of thing. This is brilliant. This is, I'll just give one example. There's quite a few examples in the book, along with Abydos King's List not being a King's List, or what it really means. There's tons of stuff. You'll enjoy it, okay? Now, this is the Nama palette, supposed to be one of the oldest sort of messages, if you like, in the world, thousands of years old, all that kind of stuff. It's brilliant. It's so ram-jammed with symbology that you can now translate. Not deduce, translate. Big difference, okay? And there's loads of things. I'll zoom in on one bit in a second, but just to give an idea, like this ceremony here, there's so much symbology. Like, look at his curly ear, which represents the wind, and that shows he's agile and virile. You can see the 3 eyebrows, which will come on into a second. Triple eyebrows, again, in Welsh, you can translate that. Why he's got the tail on, what the tail means in Welsh, and what that tells you. Well, actually, that means he's the legitimate heir, okay? That's is the Welsh word for legitimate heir. It's the same as tail. I mean, how weird is this getting, eh? And then why he's carrying sandals, why he's got a kettle in his hands. You can look at the Welsh words. Why this flower, what it is. And what's going on here, this person is not a prisoner being executed as sometimes described. You can see he's got this sort of nail thing. And what they're doing is open up the temple and they're getting the liquid out because the brain floats. It's all in the book. There you can see the tools they use. This is the thing. You need to prick the hole. And this is the liquid. You can read all this stuff. Look at this, for instance, this hawk, which gives us Hebod, which is the guide. So he's the guide. He's conducting this ceremony. And what he's doing, if you look, I wish I could get this cursor to work. That's actually a left hand. So you look up left hand in Welsh, and it tells you why it's the left hand, not the talons here. Talons also have a meaning, by the way. And then you can see what he's actually doing is when you read the Welsh full thing, he's blowing. So he's blowing some sort of drugs, whatever these things are here, poppies or something. He's blowing that up the nose of the person. He's going to get this amazing euphoric thing and, be able to become an initiate and see visions and whatever. This is the whole thing described. You got down here these people who got, they got left hands and the way they're running. Oh, it's great. They all have Welsh words. I'll just zoom in one little bit, just to give an idea. On the top, you see here these bull's heads. Well, not bull's heads, they're people. Why are they drawn like this? Why are they drawn so weird, okay? And try and work it out. Look at the ears. Why are the ears like that? Why has he got 3 mouths? Look at the right one. Why has he got 3 mouths? What's this weird way of drawing the nose? The left one, you can see better the 3 eyebrows. The right one does have it, but you can't see it clearly on the photograph. So I'll zoom in anyway. So let's have a look. So here's the horns. Welsh horn corniog is horned. Cornog means crowned. It's amazing, isn't it? Do you remember if some of the older members of the audience might remember Coroner Pop? There's a pop company who used to come around with the lorries and deliver pop before the days Coke took over the world. Well, coroner meant crowns or crowned. It's a Welsh word, but you didn't know that, eh? Because there's now a beer called Corona, isn't it? Which is Spanish. Anyway, that's the Welsh, so that's why they have horns. The symbology and all that stuff, or ball and whatever, I have no idea. All I know is what it says. Alright, so he's the crown. Those ears, look at the ears. They're leaves. Alright, so there's a leaf. Dall in Welsh, which is to hold or to keep. So he's the one who keeps the crown. If you remember, there's 2 of them. So you've got the deer, means supreme. It goes on and on, right? Every little bit's important. There's the open mouth speaking, remember, to proclaim. Look at this. If you look, he's got 3 mouths. He hasn't got eyes, he's got 3 mouths, okay? So the 3 mouths, well, tree in Welsh is absolute and certain. You see it all through Welsh history and records. The triads, the Arwen is the holy 3. The Arwen comes into this as well, but that's another story. So you've got the Arwen, the 3. It means, you remember things in 3s. It means certain and absolute. So he's speaking with absolute authority, all right? And look at his nose. What does that look like? It's a leek again. Remember we had the leek being a message? Well, there's another way of drawing a leek, all right? Kenning, message. So he speaks absolute certainty with this message and he holds the crown. And you can go through the whole thing. It's just awesome. Oh, well, the eyebrows, I almost forget. So you saw it better on the left-hand one. An eyebrow, a bow or a curve or an arch in Welsh. Bua, which is boo, which is threatening or frightening. And 3 of them, he's absolutely frightening. Curiously, you might notice the emblem for Glamorgan is 3 chevrons, 1, 2, 3. Absolutely frightening, perhaps. Who knows? It's definitely curious that it's got that logo, isn't it? So there we go. There's loads of stuff. You could talk all day just about this. This opens everything up for you. There's a dictionary. The 300 odd most common hieroglyphs already done. If you get stuck, get yourself a dictionary out. You can buy the reprints. Work it out yourself. It's not difficult anymore. 1 hour, not even 1 hour, how long has it been on for? 40 minutes or something, and you can now do it. You just need more examples and practice and go through how to build up sentences and words, and just like you would learn any other writing system, except you don't have to learn alphabet or anything. If you were a Welsh speaker and you spoke Old Welsh, you would just draw what you say and see. I'm going to give the last, sorry. So, by the way, Wallace might root from Welsh, but that's another question. Anyway, so E.A. Wallace Budge, who is the absolute giant of Egyptology, along with Champollion, but he's the other one. He said, oh, if only we knew the language. He was pleading like, we can't do it. We don't know the language. I'm producing these massive dictionaries. In the introduction, I'm telling you, they're guesses. We don't know, all right? And people he just charges on. Once something's been talked about in enough books, it just becomes fact. This is how it works, unfortunately. Come up with a theory, talk about it, write loads and loads of books, it becomes a fact. It's not a fact, okay? Whatever you think of Cymraeglyphics, whether it works or not, I'm pretty sure it does, but I'm 100% sure the conventional system does not work, all right? So anyway, if only we knew the language, well, now we do. Thanks to this wonderful man, we want to give the last word to... It's a bit quiet, but try your best.
It's a good book. If this doesn't do it, then we might as well pack it in.
That's what Alan says there. It's a good book. If this doesn't do it, we might just as well pack it in. And that was the first edition. It went really well, really quick, and I did update it with more examples and entries. Oh, and people, another thing is that readers of the first edition, some of them discovered, they broke down hieroglyphs I hadn't yet done, and you check them out, check through text and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, great. And I put the words in the new dictionary, so you'll see other people accredited with finding certain hieroglyphs, because you can do it. You could do it. All right. So there you go. There's a whistle-stop tour of Cymraeglyphics. I hope that's given you enough to at least think about the possibility and give it a go. It does work. Well, if you're into this kind of thing, it'll change everything, and you can do it. It's easy, all right? It's easy. So thanks once again to Hugh for this opportunity to present it, and I'm looking forward to questions, all right? Go to cymraeglyphics.com if you want to buy the book or get hold of me, and I will say, whenever I do a talk, I always say the Welsh word for peace, which is heddwch.
Megalithomania community. Hello.
Hello. Yes. I can hear the cheering in my mind now.
Mass ranks.
In a room full of people cheering away, Alan.
All with their stone chisel.
Everyone will be very excited to see you. Still going strong.
Stone hammers.
Still going strong. There he is, the great man himself.
Yeah.
Well, we're on a good day today. And I think one of the things struck me most useful for this is we talk a lot about ancient Egypt and the stones, and then following that kind of building culture all the way through to Turkey and Italy.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you see that tying together?
Well, it's firstly imperial, in that the empires were no different to the British Empire. The British Empire ran Egypt, and they also ran India, and the official language of India is English.
Right.
So you only got to look at it that way, and you see that there's a possibility that the more literate invaders would have a dominance of their own tongue and be of the literature of the country, because in order to talk to the bosses, the people in the country, the leaders would have to speak the same language as well.
So is this we're talking about where the Assyrians came into Egypt then? Or?
Yes, I think they would have also settled there in quite numbers in the Delta. There's every indication they did. They didn't just all come in and, like a Second World War, all the Germans went home. You know, it didn't work that way. The wars took a long time. People got married, they had kids, and so soldiers were marrying Egyptian women and one thing and the other, or bringing in their relatives. And so I think the cultural flow was much slower and more positive than it is today. We do get Pakistani and Indian communities in Britain who still speak their own language in their mosques or in their private houses. But the next generation won't, and the next one after that.
No.
That's already happening.
Yeah, it's a remarkable thing, isn't it? Yeah, we have that in our family, of course, because my wife speaks Mandarin. Very difficult to get the children to do it. They just want to speak the local language.
Well, of course, they play with other kids. They go around watching TV and they're talking to other kids. They're not going to want to speak a language that the other kids don't speak, because most people they're speaking to are the other kids, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah.
They're not speaking to adults. You can be a bit of a nuisance to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we're saying that the language of ancient Egypt was Assyrian. Is that what you're saying? Is the or the language of the hieroglyphics? Sorry.
No.
No. Okay.
It's you can translate it perfectly straight away into Welsh without the slightest problem. The Welsh dictionary in Romans, right?
Yes.
No, it couldn't be simpler, could it?
No.
But ancient Welsh writers hinted at this, you see. And they talked about the stones of Gwydion Gab Hebdon, upon which all the knowledge of the world is written. They're talking about the hieroglyphs. So why would ancient Welsh writers be talking about the hieroglyphs?
That's amazing,
in Wales? Because all the knowledge of the world was written on. And so we said we'd give it a go. It's the easiest thing you could ever do. It's like falling off a log. Hieroglyphs are all written in Welsh.
Yeah.
Of course, that will not please some of the upper class in certain quarters of Britain, you old boy.
Yes.
Oxford, Cambridge and London may feel a little bit put out.
Yes, a little put out. But isn't the point then that the Welsh Cymraeg language then, it goes all the way back to ancient Assyria? I think that's what I was trying to
Yes, it goes all the way back. You can track it all the way back, which we have done.
Yes.
I think reasonably successfully. Yeah. In that the attempts at translation of documents of ancient texts on stones and that works every time. You don't have to say, hang on, this doesn't know, let's make something up at all. It just works every time. Now, if something works every time, pretty surely going to be right, isn't it?
Well, yes, yes.
And if it's coherent, it makes sense.
Yes.
You know, talking about leadership or wars or successions or thrones,
Yeah.
and treaties and so on. If it makes sense and it's coherent, then it's right, isn't it?
And the other big difference seems to be with what I call hieroglyphics is that it reads the same way every time. You haven't got like 12 versions to choose from every time.
No.
That doesn't make any sense, does it?
There's no, in this context it means A, and in this context it means Z. No, it's the same thing. You can't jig about with it.
So how's that tying in? Because obviously with the Megalithomania and everything, it's the stones. I'm looking at the polygonal stones. You know, the irregular structures.
Yeah.
And big walls built.
Yeah.
I mean, have you followed that trail at all as well? Because you seem to see the building of the pyramids.
Well,
and then it's similar into Turkey and places like that, perhaps.
Oh, there are similarities in the ancient structures. But our sole interest has really been the languages and decipherments. That's been our primary interest. Legions of people who will gladly go into the intricacies of how they lived, how they fought, how they made things. They have blacksmiths and so on. They're all legions of academics who are well qualified to deal with that. But when it comes to the decipherments of the text and to read what was going on politically or diplomatically or even legislation, then Welsh definitely was. It's the language, whether it was the language of the upper class, I don't know, because in Britain the Anglo-Saxons spoke some Anglo-Saxon, and the Normans came in and they spoke French, you know, and for a long time the upper class in England was speaking French.
Yes.
Oh boy, and the rest of the people were all speaking
they still never caught on with the
English,
population,
all else. And it took quite a time for them to decide they better start speaking English.
Because one of the trails you've been following on your research, more recently, going into 2020, current times now, is so you're following the migration from Egypt over to Turkey, Italy, Wales, and then over to America, you think?
Yes. Well, we had colleagues in America for some years, and they had noted. I went out there for a couple of lecture tours, and it was brought to my attention there were inscriptions on stones in America which were clearly Welsh Colburn.
Right.
The Colburn is a certain alphabet, and obviously, if you've got Welsh Colburn alphabet, you want to grab a dictionary, don't you?
So you can read it, yeah.
So you can read it, and we did. And then, of course, we told them that they read into Welsh. Well, of course, then they were saying, well, this is our ancestral ideas in this region, Kentucky, and that was Welsh area. And it's been handed down to generations, that the Welsh had come there, and therefore finding a Welsh inscription shouldn't be any real surprise. And we found over 400.
Over 400?
There are over 400.
Wow.
And various lengths and some just a name, you know.
Yeah, because I know about the famous ones like Back Creek Cave and things like that. I didn't realise there were so many.
Well, a lot of farmers have them, and they don't tell anyone. And they want people coming on their land. So I was often brought in under strict guard.
Right.
And I promised not to say where it was, you know.
Yeah.
So there are a lot more than you think.
Because where you think they moved on after Kentucky is interesting as well, isn't it?
Yes, Kentucky. Well, they must have come upriver, mustn't they? You see. And in Tennessee as well. And through, yeah.
Right, so they got into Tennessee, yeah.
Tennessee, Kentucky, and then they went north as well, and some of them went further south, and that's how you get them. The Inca in Peru, they spoke Welsh.
See, this is why I think it's been fascinating particularly for this conference, is the finding traces of this in Peru. Then.
Aye. We never got out to Peru. We had no money to go. But we could get people to send us photographs, and correspond with us.
Yes.
The same thing. You go out there, look at it, I'll get a photograph. It's the same thing.
So thank you very much, Ross. Thank you, Alan. We really appreciate your time today, and we're just going to get Ross joining us to take a couple of questions. Let me just make sure we've got him available. That's it. So now you can open up your video, Ross, and join us and unmute yourself. That'd be cool. And yeah, thanks so much for that. That was absolutely mind-blowing. I think I've got seen quite a few comments, quite a few questions about your research, and yeah, absolutely brilliant. It's so good to see Alan as well. Alan's a big hero of me and JJ. We've been obviously following Alan's work for years. I saw him live like 12 years ago, I think, at a conference, and his stuff is just unbelievable. So yeah, and your work on the hieroglyphs as well, I think, is blowing a few people's minds. I'm watching the comments here, but we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A, so we'll just deal with them. This is from Simon Congreve. Why do sentences face one way on one occasion and the other way another time? Is there a significance in this, and if so, what is that significance?
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for the comments. It's been great seeing all the positive comments come in, and thank you, Hugh. I don't know why they go right or left. I mean, it just I think there's a few ancient languages that do that and varies. But what is easy with the hieroglyphs, you just see which, as has been known for a long time, whichever way the animal or bird is pointing marks the start of the sentence. What I'd like to make out here with Alan has wanted it for years, and I would like it, is really for academics to take this on and work out all things like that. You know, at the moment we can just read it. So might be lots of things to find out.
Okay, we've got a question from Juliet. This came in during the lecture, so you may have answered this during the lecture, I'm not sure. Hieroglyphs have not evolved. How about Welsh language? If Welsh evolved with time, how can we link two languages that were not used at the same time?
Well, this is a curious thing. I mean, the core words and everything in the centre of Cymraeg or Welsh don't seem to have, excuse me, changed much over time. One of the problems with all this is that for hundreds and hundreds of years in Britain, the Welsh language has been seriously suppressed and censored. I mean, as soon as Caxton brought his first printing press into London, it was immediately a law was passed to make it illegal to print anything in Welsh. So I think it's been massively overcomplicated, and I would dispute really the whole tracing of the Welsh language, always Brythonic A and Brythonic B and tying other languages. It seems far more sensible, at least the core of it. I mean, you can just read it and it makes sense. So I don't really know. I'm not a linguist as such.
Okay, we've got a few people just, where can I purchase the book? But someone's put an answer in at hieroglyphics.com. That's actually where you can get Alan's work there as well. Reprints of his, so it's well worth checking that out, because, you know, it's just been, his books have been unavailable for so long. So to get them suddenly all available again is dynamite. And he's got more coming out as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. There's a few new books coming out. They give me lots of unpublished notes to go on, and there's so many mind-blowing things. The one which I hopefully have ready for next year is all about pyramids and why they were built and all that kind of thing. Okay. I'm just dying to tell the world.
Okay, we've got a question from Simon Banton. It's partly comment, partly question. Although I agree with the interpretation of what any glyph might actually represent can be flawed, if the conventional approach is so wrong, how could Miriam Lichthelm's translation of, for example, the tale of the shipwrecked sailor come about and still be coherent? What would your system make of the same text? And he's just saying he's interested in this because he learned how to read Middle Kingdom hieroglyphic texts at City University in the 1990s.
Yeah, no, this is where it gets a little bit painful, a little bit difficult. I mean, I've spent decades reading a lot of the translations and stuff as well, and some of them are wonderful, particularly the ones written in the 19th century. But it's sad if we look back at someone like Samuel Birch, who was the first one, and one of the ones is just going to really rock sort of alternative world, if you like, as much as the mainstream world, is things like the Book of the Dead, where so much has been built on those early translations, Whereas if you look at it and who translated it, he didn't have any Egyptology background. He was just farming all the receipts coming in from around the empire as historians on the field took guesses, and he would write them all down, and he could see how this was working. He'd have loads and loads of possible definitions of each word. So he just did a load himself, and he translated with no training or anything. He translated massive volumes, and some of the prose and writing is fantastic as works of literature. But I know it's going to be a tough one to swallow. But I mean, it's a huge opportunity, really, for Egyptologists and universities. Is my view, it seems all needs doing again.
Okay, thank you. Matthew Smith has asked, have you looked at the ties to Etruscan or Basque?
Oh, yes, Etruscan, definitely. And you'll already see that, of course, Alan Wilson, while he's over there working, he had weekends free from his job. By the way, he's a master planner. He's got this computer brain. So when they were building new shipyards, he would control the whole operation in his head, where all the supplies would come. Just starting from a beach to producing battleships. That's the kind of guy you're dealing with, all right? And while he was over there building these Italian dockyards, he'd spend his weekends going around the museums. He had a look, went, oh, look at that. I can read that. And he cracked Etruscan. And what's weird, this is back probably 1990s or maybe earlier 80s, is that at the time there was quite a bit of publicity, and it was accepted in Italian universities. And that's kind of just been swept under the rug and disappeared again. It's weird. It's like, just ignore it long enough, it'll go away. And I think that's what would have happened with what I've called the Cymraeglyphics. There was a bit of attention 20 years ago when he did all this, and it's just, let's just ignore it and it'll go away. Well, this isn't going to go away, and we're going to have a book on Etruscan coming out soon as well, showing how you can also read that.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, we've got question from Katie Ball. Hi Ross, love everything you do. The language feels very much like the language also of our subconscious mind. Do you ever apply it to correct your dreams? And furthermore, if it can be applied to the subconscious mind, do you think it suggests it's a universal language and perhaps even has our origins in our genetics?
Well, that's a fantastic question. That's really got me thinking. I will have to have a think about that one. What I would say, it does raise the issue that I mentioned it in the video quickly. If you go back to just very quick potted history, this connection with Egyptian and Welsh was spotted way back in the 1790s. It's not that new an idea. 1840s, mostly German linguists were seeing it, and what they said, which ties in with Katie's question, is that there was one pure formal language, if you like, an early Assyrian language spoken, and that language spread. And you will see, for example, a lot of similarities between Welsh and Sanskrit in India. Now, this doesn't mean that Sanskrit came from Welsh or Welsh came from Sanskrit. They both came from a more ancient source. And the point was, because Wales is sort of stuck on the edge of Europe, and it's never really had much population movements or anything, it's, as he put it, most jealously guarded. It's very much like an original language. And I tell you, when you start doing this and seeing how it works with the hieroglyphs, I can't work out whether the hieroglyphs or the language came first or they came together or what. I mean, it really opens up a whole new field for people to have a think about and look into.
Okay, good. Matthew Smith, who asked the previous question regarding Basque and Etruscan, was also thinking about migration routes as well. So I don't know if you've got any comments on that.
Well, this does seem to, what Alan Wilson was doing, he didn't set out looking to work out hieroglyphs. I mean, they started with Arthurian history, really, and then going through this whole area of British history. This is why the group you can find it on website and Facebook, is Britain's Hidden History, all one word. Because a lot of the whole tumult of British history, all the kings and queens and the descendants and the migrations coming from the Middle East, it was all taught in history books until around about the 1700s. And what seems to have happened, the Hanoverians have come in. There's a revolutionary feel in the air. So the English have sold the idea that they're all Anglo-Saxons, where only a small percentage are. And the Scots, Welsh and Irish get pigeonholed as Celts who just drifted over from Europe. And it's this, get the history books, have a look. You will not find this in the history books before about 1700. There was a sort of political rewrite of the history books, and that's the history we've all been taught in schools. Funny enough, most of it was still taught in Welsh schools until the 1920s. I've got old books here, old academic books, the kind of things I show in the videos. You can see in the schools up to about 1920s, they were still teaching about migrations. Why did Shakespeare write Troilus and Cressida about Troy, all this kind of thing? British history has been completely hidden. It's not lost, it's been hidden deliberately. Oh, I know. Anyway, sorry, I'll stop. I've got a question even after all that.
There's another follow-up from Matthew Smith's second question. Google have an online AI translator for hieroglyphs. Have you checked it out? And if so, is it also flawed by the legacy schemes of the translation?
I have no idea. I haven't really tried it, but I would be very surprised if they use Cymraeglyphics. I don't know how they've done it, because the problem is if you get yourself a learn hieroglyphs books, I've gone through loads of them over the years, and you'll see there's no explanation for any hieroglyphs. So this means this, and this means this, and this means this. It doesn't say why.
Okay, great. We've got a Welsh question from Hugh Evans. I don't know if you can see the Q&A. Maybe you want
a little bit
Q&A, but I'm going to try and pronounce this Delorn Diolch Ross. So that means probably.
Diolch Diolch. Thank you very much.
Does that mean you're awesome or something?
No, it just means thank you very much.
Okay, good.
Thank you anyway, Hugh.
And Josh C asks does the book contain further interpretations of the Nama Stele, or the Nama?
Yeah, loads of stuff on there. Yeah, why he's got a little kettle, why they're carrying the sandals, what the flower is. That's the one that's been done in most depth. And what are really good, I mean, Hugh Evans is mentioned on there. He's one who's looking at trying to retranslate the Book of the Dead. We've got other people looking into it. This is a whole new subject. People should be excited. This is a whole new subject. You can go in there with a dictionary in your hand rather than people trying to go, what could that mean,
Yeah, for sure. And we've got Melanie here. She is asked about George Borrow's book, Wild Wales. And he says it has a lot of Welsh word compared to Sanskrit. Any comments on this?
Yeah, I've already touched on that. I mean, this is a very close relationship between the two languages. And one thing, I'll put this out there now. One thing I'm trying to find is, because Alan's been trying to research, he's been researching the Cymry, then moving on to North America, and you've got this migration in the 6th century, 1,000 years before Columbus. So that's another story. They covered so much in one lifetime, it's remarkable. But there's an interesting connection I discovered the other day, or someone told me, I'm sorry, I can't remember the person, is that in Welsh you have this lla, that people say you're spitting in their face, like Llanfair or something like that. Well, there's also a ll sound in 2 other languages only in the whole world, it seems. One is Sanskrit and one is Cherokee. So I'm trying to find out more about Cherokee, and it's difficult because they're kind of resurrecting the language and saving it because hardly anyone spoke it, and they're teaching what I think might be a slightly different version in schools, as is happening in Wales right now. The Welsh being taught in schools is different. It's different to Old Welsh. So yes, Sanskrit. Oh, can I just say one thing on there? I'll give you an example. There's a lot of words in modern Egyptian as well, which tie in with Welsh, which is a bit weird. Like one example is obviously Pharaoh. You've got the Welsh word Pharaon, which means high powers, which is interesting in itself. And if you ever see those things, they get the water out of the Nile with, it's got a big weight on one end and a sack. So you get the water, and then the counterweight helps you lift it out. Well, that's called a shadoof. And in Welsh, you got sha is sack, and doof is water. So This is the water sack. You can still see it there. That's bizarre. This has been missed, really.
That is amazing. Just to remind, there's a few more questions. Got a couple more coming in here. Let's just get through these. Katie Ball asks, have you heard of a person in Northamptonshire, Leicestershire, folk memory that sounds very much like King Arthur but written Offa, O-F-F-A? Does that make sense?
Sorry. No, but one thing I would say in that area, you've got Elmet, which was there just a little bit from Leicestershire and a bit further north, which is an ancient British kingdom that held out well into the 9th, 10th century. So anyway, I don't know that one particularly, no, but there's a lot more British history around. It's not just in Wales. A lot of the Welsh history, by the way, a lot of the triads and things talk about events in England. It's only stored there. One thing I would like to say before I come across as some nutty Welsh nationalist is that the English people have lost more than the Welsh people have. At least the Welsh are aware there was a language and a history and all this kind of thing. In England, don't seem to be even aware of it. They're sort of wearing this Anglo-Saxon badge of pride, whereas all the research seems to show the vast majority of Britons are not Anglo-Saxon.
Absolutely. So we've got a question from Frank Demos, and he asks, are you familiar with Michael Sarian and his theories that Sanskrit and northeastern European languages have a similar origin from an earlier advanced civilization, brackets Atlantis? If so, do you feel there is a case or argument for this based on language systems?
Yes. Sorry, yes, and yes. I have,
like a mother culture, yeah.
I haven't studied his work, but I mean, it does seem all come from the language anyway. Comes from a common point. I mean, it's conjecture beyond that, isn't it? I mean, one of the things we're looking at and working with Marcel Abrahams, who's a writer, is the idea that there was an early civilization in Britain and Doggerland and all these places, which, for various reasons, I would suggest a slipping of the ice poles rather than a global ice age. They became uninhabitable. They had to move away. And then at some point they migrated back as the poles, because the poles are always shifting. I think people are aware of this. And they've been much further south and would have made the climate unlivable. It'd been like living in Alaska or something like that. And then as it's gone back, they've returned, which is why I think some of the dates are tens of thousands of years. And yet the land of Britain would be more or less uninhabited till they started returning around about 1900. And I particularly loved Gail's presentation earlier about the stones being lined up with the landscapes and everything, because you see that ties in with a date around about 1500 BC, which would tie in with the migrations returning. And another thing is Hugh Evans, who's in this, watching this, he's written a book, which will be out soon, hopefully, showing that a much more ancient source of the zodiac can be traced back to the British landscape. So I know it's a complicated thing. It's a fascinating subject, though.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, Hugh, you still got to send me that book, by the way. And also Alexandra Madden says, fascinating lecture. The mythology of Queen Scota or Scotia is maybe not just myth after all.
Absolutely, no. I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, I'm agreeing with your comment. No, what we have to remember here is, first of all, I've seen a couple of comments coming up, mixing up Celts, Gaels, and Britons. I want to make, this is my campaign, my personal campaign for years now. The Britons are not Celts. The Irish are not Celts. The Celts are in the south of France. They never came to Ireland, Scotland, England, or Wales. Nothing to do with Britain. Shouldn't use the term. The language is not Celtic. That's a different people. It's the first thing. The Gaels came later. They're different people. And the Scots, who are now in Scotland, the Scotii, they're also a different people, and they invaded and changed the name of Scotland, right? We need to clarify these things first. Now, when we're looking at them, so the language connections, it's curious because you have in Scottish a strong nationalist movement to restore the old Gaelic language. Well, actually, there's an older British language before that, and the Gaelic is different. So I lost my track of the question a bit, but that's the kind of point of it, is that you got the Gaelic language is a little bit different. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. Yeah, it's to do with this, the Queen. Yeah, the old, if you look at the old Irish records of their original migrations as well, the story goes all the way back to the Bible, the times of Egypt. And whereas you've got the Cymry and the Lost Tribes, this is a controversial area, going one way, another group of people was ordered to pursue them, and they refused and went the other way. And this is the story, the origin story, that goes all the way back to Ireland. But as for the red-haired mummies and that, you'll see those explained in Trojan War, where Wilson and Blackett explains one of those is actually Menelaus, and it all ties in with the Trojan War. So I'm trying to quick history of the world in 1 minute. Yeah.
The whole Scota thing is fascinating. I know there's been several books come out on that. We're mentioning that in our forthcoming book, because there's a Scottish and Irish and possible Welsh connection. It's pretty amazing, actually. A couple more questions. Is there, Ivy Merriott asks, is there a translation for the handbag? I guess that means the one.
Handbag? Oh yeah, I'm trying.
Or the man bag.
I have to get the book for that one. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Well, I think it's a kettle one we see on here. The symbol, the thing the guy's holding. Yeah.
Often. Yeah.
Oh, in many different I knew places, that was going to come up. I should have looked it up. So if you look in your snazzy dictionary in the back, so what I should do now is flick through all the symbols, so I see the little handbag thing. Give me a few minutes. No, it's all right. Like, another question in the meantime, or I can come back to that one. I'll put it in the written answers. That's what politicians do, isn't it? It'll be in the written answers.
Okay. So yeah, we've got. Do you want me to move on to the next question, or do you want to have?
I'll come back to you if I find it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to find it. Okay, I'll move on to the next questions. We're running out of time.
All right,
this is from Alison K. What did you say, Ross, about the Cherokee? it's similar to Sanskrit, she asks, as question mark. And if so, many of the pictographs or hieroglyphs you reviewed are similar to the cave and wall art within Native American excavations, especially the Anasazi. Have you seen the Anasazi connection?
I don't know about Anasazi directly. I mean, I found the kettlebow. It doesn't take long. What I would say on that is when Alan Wilson was invited over by the Ancient Society or Kentucky Society, Lee Pennington, my guest tomorrow, he's still running that. And when he went over across there, a lot of these emblems, like for example, you've got the Arwen, which is that three-pointed thing, which the British government finally adopted and use it on prisoners. You see it on the cartoons, little triangle, little arrow type thing. In America, they were calling it turkey feet and stuff and not realizing significance. As Alan mentioned in that video, he went over there and translated on the caves into Welsh. And the problem at the moment is it's considered a bit culturally inappropriate to try and give a non-original, well, how would you put it, a non-native. So I haven't looked into all those details, no, but I think what I'd like to hear more though, please. If you could send them through to me, I'd like to know more about Cherokee. I'm trying to learn it. It's quite difficult language, and I don't know enough about it. So, but I think what's happening is a lot of things which would appear to be the old possible Welsh markings or something to try and pass them off as Ogham are now being attempts to make to reinterpret them as American, Native American. And what's happening, the clock's going backwards, and all the awareness and progress being made in the 90s is again being swept under the carpet and look like being forgotten, except it's not going to be, but that's the situation.
Okay, we do have a couple more questions, but we are going to have to stop now. I'm sorry.
Right, okay, so let's say the kettle, so just quickly. The thing he's carrying looks like a kettle, is a cashloud, which is cash, which is crafty, prudent, or witty. So when you see him walking around, what's like a little handbag or something, and he's crafty, prudent, or witty, okay? Just so you're aware of it.
That's interesting because JJ was just telling me, she's also like works on ancient symbols, that there's a tomb on the Giza Plateau where the bag is a representation actually of someone's name as well. But she can get into the chat and discuss that. But we're gonna have to pause now and have a short break. I mean, anyone who's got any more questions, they can
it goes on forever. This does, yeah.
they can chat with you, ask questions to Ross in the chat box. We're gonna have to close down the Q&A because we need a little break before Mike Parker Pearson. Me and Ross will say farewell. Thank you again, Ross, and a big thank you to Alan. Please tell him thanks, and we can continue the chat in the chat box and also in the speakers forum tomorrow as well.
And I've taken your fashion tips as well, Hugh, because I noticed I was wearing a jumper earlier. You have to wear a branded T-shirt with a jacket.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a fashion tip.
I've gone for the Hugh Newman look. There we go. Look.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ross. All right. We'll see you back here. We'll see you back here in just under 10 minutes, everybody.